all across America and around the world. Welcome to the #1 Veterans Program, Veterans Radio. And now here's your host for today's program, Dale Throneberry.
Good morning, America, and welcome to Veterans Radio on this beautiful fall evening in Michigan. And we are coming to you from the studios of Ave Maria Radio in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And joining me today is my air boss, Bob Gould. Welcome, Bob.
And to all my brothers and sisters across America and around the world, hoo-wah!
Hoo-wah is right. We want to say a greeting especially to a new friend from Brazil, Enzio, who sent us an email this week saying that he listens to our program every week.
Can I read it?
Yes, you may.
Okay. I'm very proud of your country and your program. Say hello to my American veterans friends. We are soldiers forever, Semper Fi, signed Ezio, Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Right, and we would give a greeting, but we think it's in Portuguese, and we don't speak Portuguese.
I don't know a word. I was going to do it in Spanish until you told me this morning that it's a Portuguese country. Maybe Ezio can...
there you go. You can always give us a call here at Veterans Radio if you'd like to. We are available at a toll-free number. I don't know how it started.
What do I know?
You know,
yeah.
That's when, remember, that's back in the 15th century, they divided the world and all these other things. You know, never mind.
But
that's
we
another
reached
history
Brazil. Lesson. That must be, what, 6,000 miles away? 7,000?
Yeah, 8,000? I don't know what the time zone is there. It's probably similar to the one that we're in. I don't know.
That would be
anyway, Enzio, if you're listening, you can always give us a call at 877-573-7825, and we would love to have you on the air. We haven't talked to anybody from that far away since we talked to our friends down under. And, you know, and it's great. We've got a great program for you today.
And who do we have on?
Well, I'll tell you just a second. We're going to be talking about the USO. For all of you veterans out there, you all know what the USO is, and it provided a lot of services and entertainment for those of us who were overseas and local. We got to see some incredible acts, and I know that there are many people that are going overseas currently to Iraq and Afghanistan, putting on shows for the troops that are over there. In our generation, we got to see Bob Hope and Martha Raye and Joey Heatherton and Raquel Welch and some other great talents, and also very attractive people, because we hadn't seen very attractive people, it seemed like, in a long time. Well, we're going to be talking with John Hansen, who's the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communication with the USO. We're going to be talking a little bit about the history. If you've got a USO story you'd like to share with us, you can give us a call at 877-573-7825. In the second half of the program, we've got Noonie Fortin on, and she has written a book called Memories of Maggie, and it talks all about Martha Raye, who was one of my favorite comedians as I was growing up.
Oh, and my mother would just split aside watching black and white TV, of course, way back when.
That's right. And Martha Raye is most famous, I think, for her comedy, obviously, and the shows that she was on. And she was over there actually with Bob Hope and on her own. She was out there a lot, out in the boonies. And she was an honorary colonel in the Army, and she was buried with military honors, which is very unusual. So I'm excited to talk to Noonie about that and about the book and about Maggie.
You know, I got a little USO story. I'm reading a book right now about Woody Hayes and the football team at Ohio State. He would, on his own, arrange to go visit the troops in Vietnam during the beginning of the Vietnam War. And he would be there every year during the holidays. I
don't think that people understand, and I'm hoping we'll get some stories from John about the type of acts and the people that do go overseas. I mean, it's amazing, the number of tours, I guess you could call it, that are over there.
Well, also in the scene of Apocalypse Now, they had that scene.
Oh,
was that? Well, I know, but wouldn't you want to ask the question? How realistic was that? How real did that stuff like that happen?
I really don't know, because I never got to see a USO show. I was working, I guess they could say. The only one I got to see was a Bob Hope show when I was 2,000 feet above it, and it was at Long Bin in 1969, I want to say, or 68, because I was the new guy in country, and I had to fly that day, and I flew over the top of it. And there were thousands of troops, and way down in the middle of this little tiny stage, it looked like, my senior pilot booked. He said, "Oh, there's Bob Hope," and I'm going, "What? Then what am I doing up here? With Bob Hope down there?" But we did get to see that there were other acts that we got to see that we'll talk about later on.
And a little bit about that. They still have the warming centers where you could go in towns and get coffee and donuts all hours of the day and night, as far as I know. I wonder if they still have those.
Oh, I know that. Well, John will fill us in on that. And when I flew down to Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago, there was a USO in Detroit, there was one in Dallas, and there was one in Tulsa. So we know that they're still out there. I'm excited to talk with John and with Nooney to find out more about Martha Raye and about the USO. But right now we're going to go to our weekly segment called Welcome Home.
Thank you, Dale. Welcome home each week on Veterans Radio. We welcome home servicemen and women who, after serving away from their country, are returning home. We get Dateline here, Fort Carson, Colorado. 75 Fort Carson soldiers returned home to hugs and kisses from family at the Mountain Post. They were deployed for 14 months. Members of the 1st Squadron, 6th Cavalry Regiment flew reconnaissance and combat support missions in Kiowa helicopters. Ooh, what's a Kiowa helicopter?
That's
I know.
54. It's a small version of a Huey. It's bigger than a Loach, smaller than a Huey.
A lot of firepower, right?
Not a lot, but it's enough.
Well, let's hear a little bit for those persons from the 1st Squadron, 6th Cavalry. Dateline, Arizona. Soldiers of the 996th Area Support Medical Company, Arizona National Guard, returned home after serving in Iraq. Dateline, Utah Desert News. Whoop, got to go to another copy on that one. Here we go. Got to have them right here, right? There we are. After 6 months of providing security for coalition and non-combatant forces and security for convoys defending military bases, providing law enforcement duties, 25 Utah Air National Guard airmen came home Saturday. When the plane landed, 2 fire trucks sprayed an arch of water, for the plane to pass through. And the Air Guard said that was their way of saying hello. That's kind of cool. Fire trucks going out there and you're coming underneath. That's really cool. Dateline, Evansville, Indiana. 300 soldiers from the 163rd Indiana National Guard returned home after a 9-month deployment in Iraq. Dateline, Danbury, Connecticut. Thumbs up to the return of soldiers from the 411th Civil Affairs Battalion to Danbury. They were the Army Reserve Unit serving a year in Iraq. Said a colonel welcoming them home, "We should take the time to welcome them home and make sure they understand that we appreciate their service. They deserve our respect." Each week.
Well, we're back on Veterans Radio, and we're going to be talking in just a moment with John Hansen from the USO, but I wanted to read this little blurb that I got. It says, since World War II, the USO has been a steadfast supporter of military personnel around the world. While times have changed, the USO mission has remained the same, to boost the morale of service members and to serve as a link between them and the American people. Today, the USO delivers its programs and services to 1.4 million active duty service members and 1.2 million National Guard and Reserves, as well as their families at more than 130 centers located worldwide. Their services include information referral, internet, email access, housing, emergency assistance, and support groups, just to name a few. So happy anniversary to the USO, and joining me on the line right now is John Hansen. John, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thank you, Dale. It's great to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the program, and I want to say that John is the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for the USO, and you are stationed in Washington. Is that correct?
We're just outside. We're in Arlington, Virginia. We can see Washington from our office.
That's a great view. I like that idea. John, tell me, how did you get involved with the USO?
Well, the USO got involved with me during the Vietnam War. I was a B-52 mechanic stationed in Guam and Thailand, and the USO was extraordinarily important to me and to the people I served with. So when I got the opportunity to come on board about 7 years ago, I jumped at the chance. I wanted to contribute back to an organization that was so important to the people I served with.
Well, I can't think of any veteran who does not have fond memories of the USO. No matter where you served, stateside or overseas, it seemed like there was always somebody from the USO around to help out.
It's interesting, Dale. We hear a lot of stories from people from World War II on, and their USO stories are always good ones. It's gratifying to work for an organization that has meant so much to so many people.
Well, tell me what the USO is doing today. What's happening right now?
Well, it's interesting. As you said in that summary you just read, we're doing what we've always done. We just do it a lot faster. The troops today want to get back in touch with their families as much as you and I did when we were in the military. Mm-hmm. And so we offer them free Internet access at all of our centers, no matter where they are, from in the United States or if they're in Southwest Asia. We have a center in Iraq, one in Afghanistan. We'll be expanding in both of those countries in the next 4 or 5 months. We have 3 centers in Kuwait, a number around the Persian Gulf, and, of course, the ones you mentioned earlier across the U.S., Europe, and the Pacific. You can go there and just get away from your job for a while and be with somebody who cares about you, and you can just sort of forget about the tedium. We have about 300 employees around the world, 40,000 volunteers, and many of our centers are open 24 hours a day.
I just think it's amazing, and I know that you're always looking for funds to get this going, and so if people wanted to donate money, how would they do that?
Easiest way is to go online at USO.org, USO.org, and that's a great point. A lot of people think that we're part of the government, and we work closely with the Department of Defense, and we've got some great friends there, but we're not in anybody's budget, so we exist because of the generosity of American individuals and some really great corporations.
We're talking with John Hanson, the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communication for the USO, and I'm interested if any of you out there have a story that you'd like to share with us about your USO experience. Give us a call here at Veterans Radio at 877-573-7825. When I was researching for this program, I was kind of surprised to find out that the USO started before World War II actually got up and running, unfortunately. But how did they go about enrolling all of these actors and actresses and musicians?
During World War II, I think the country had a common sense of purpose, and it like a lot of programs and a lot of successful nonprofits, people came together, and there were troops stationed everywhere, and Hollywood and Broadway wanted to do what they could to help. So there were some individual efforts. Betty Davis started not the USO canteen, but an entertainment troupe in Hollywood that later turned into what the Hollywood Canteen and later USO Canteen shows. Bob Hope was actually told by his radio producer, something you might be familiar with, that he needed to go do his radio program at an air base in California. He didn't much want to do it, but he did it and found this wonderful audience, and he got hooked on the idea of entertaining troops. And he got started, actually, I think August or September of 1941, before Pearl Harbor, entertaining troops, and continued right up through the first Gulf War.
We have one of our shows that's archived on our website is a tribute to Bob Hope that we normally play around Christmas time. So if anybody wants to hear a little bit more about the history of Bob Hope, you can go back to, usually it's right around Christmas. Over the last 2 years, I think we've played the same program. But Bob Hope was one of the better known names, as you mentioned. Betty Grable and Betty Davis and Martha Raye, of course, we know was all involved with that, and a lot of other smaller organizations. I was reading the list of people that had appeared during World War II, and it was. I mean, it's going back in time. Obviously, we're all time tripping back to our childhood and before our childhood with names like Laurel and Hardy and Jerry Colonna and some of the other comedians and talent that went over there.
Well, it's interesting, and if you look at the films carefully of those entertainment shows, you'd see Gary Cooper and Joey Brown, Jack Benny, Mickey Rooney. I got a phone call from a photographer in Los Angeles a few years ago who asked if he would like me to, if I would like him to send a picture of his dad who performed for the USO. Turned out his dad was Jascha Heifetz.
Oh, my goodness!
And so there was a wonderful photograph of this astonishing violinist standing in front of thousands of GIs in the South Pacific with a pianist performing it. It cut across every entertainment media, medium at the time, and it was a great thing to see. You know, it was a small D Democratic Army. Just about every male got drafted, so you had tastes ranging from classical to lowbrow comedy, and I think the USO did everything they could to make sure that performers got out there.
Well, can you give me an idea of how many people were involved with the USO during World War II?
I don't know that we have a really good count, and it's varied. We know that there were a couple of thousand USO centers across the country. At just about every major railway hub in the country, there would be a USO center. There are wonderful stories about in small communities spending their ration cards or their rations on food to make sandwiches for troops who went through their communities on the trains. And your parents probably talked about that, how it was difficult to travel at that time, and the railroads were almost taken over by the military, and USOs would crop up there. But we had the centers then were as important then as they are today to give people a break, a safe, secure, warm place to be when they're a long way from home.
John, this is Bob Gould.
Hey, Bob.
How do they find the centers locally? What can we tell our listeners?
Well, if you go to our website, uso.org, there you can click on information and find the centers. We have about 60 centers, I guess, around the country, and another 75 or so around the world. We just opened a new center at Fort Carson, Colorado. I was interested in your reporting about the return of some troops there. We expanded our center at Fort Drum, New York, where the 10th Mountain Division is. We're opening a bigger center at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Dover, as you probably know, is the only military mortuary in the country, and the USO has been there caring for the families of people who have fallen, and for the troops there who volunteer to work at the mortuary. It's a really uplifting story to see how active duty Air Force people will volunteer their off duty times to go assist with the mortuary. And there are USO centers at most of the major airport hubs in this country, and of course in Europe and in the Pacific and in Southwest Asia.
I just think it's amazing that you're continuing to do this. 67 years out. I've got a sheet here in front of me that talks about that at the peak of action in 1945, the USO camp shows were presenting over 700 shows a day, with more than 300,000 performances overseas in the United States. From 1941 to 1947, over 7,000 performers put on over 500,000 shows of all kinds. And some of the people that, for our older audience out there, even though I can recognize the names myself, June Allison, Milton Berle, Catherine Grayson, Ann Jeffries, Ann Miller, the tap dancer. Remember her, Bob?
Sure do.
Yeah.
Her and Mickey Rooney.
Right. Kay Kaiser's band, Ed Wynn, Xavier Cugat, Guy Lombardo and the Royal Canadians, Gypsy Rose Lee, Count Basie, Ethel Waters, Harpo Marx, Benny Goodman. And the list just goes on and on. In fact, there was a movie that was made in the 40s called, I think it was called Four Jills in a Jeep.
And Martha Raye was in that.
Which Martha Raye was in with Carol Landis, and I forget who the other two. I don't have that in front of me right now. But I just think that this is amazing that they do this. And I want to make sure that people understand that it hasn't stopped.
And we don't pay our performers a nickel. We pay for their transportation, we feed them, and we house them. And when we're in Iraq and Afghanistan, I can tell you that the housing is not 4-star. And we get them up every morning, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, work them till about midnight, and send them home without a dime in their pockets. And most of them come right back and want to do it over again. It's great to work with these folks.
Well, I think we can, can move forward into the Vietnam era. Like I said, Bob Hope was there again. Martha Raye was there again, and some of the other people were there again. But then also we started getting into some younger talent and entertainers. I can remember, like I mentioned earlier, the Joey Heathertons, the Raquel Welches, and Margaret especially is well known for that.
Now these are mostly women. Were there any men that?
I don't remember paying attention to see who the guys were.
Was
Johnny Cash? Johnny Cash was there quite often.
I mean, it sounds like it was skewed in one direction, a little different from World War II.
Well, Johnny Rivers made a couple of tours for us. Lee Greenwood, as a young saxophone player, went over on tour. There were a lot of professional football players. Pete Rozelle had got the NFL involved with a partnership with the USO during Vietnam, and Sam Huff and Frank Gifford and a number of people. Rosie Greer went overseas to shake hands. There were NBA players, baseball players, officials from the sports. The Woody Hayes story is a great one. Today, we have college basketball coaches that go over every summer to Kuwait, and they put together teams of service members and play a round-robin tournament and present a trophy to the winner. And the soldiers are excited to play for these legendary basketball coaches, and the coaches forget that the games don't really count. They get really involved.
They're coaches. What else are they going to do, right?
So it's really gratifying. They'll give up their time to do that, and it's not easy. It really is. We put these folks through the grinder, and they come back again and again.
Well, let's move forward into what is happening in Iraq and Afghanistan now. What type of people are going over there? I know that the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, because that was a big web page that I saw.
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, I think, are going out on their 65th tour this Christmas to Korea. They send a troop of cheerleaders to Korea and Japan every Christmas time, and part of what they do is a cheerleading clinic for children of service members there. But they also go around and meet and greet troops and spend their Christmas away from home. Kurt Schilling, former Red Sox pitcher, will be going over soon to shake some hands. Lewis Black, Kid Rock, will be going. Last year, Robin Williams made, I think, his 5th or 6th trip during the holidays. There's a great story. Robin, I happened to be on the tour. We flew from Andrews to Qatar. It took us about 16 hours and performed there. Got on a plane, flew to Kuwait for 2 shows in the afternoon. And I think the second show, I went over to get some coffee because we hadn't really wasted much time sleeping. And when I was walking back, retreat sounded. And the entire audience, in the middle of Robin Williams' routine, by the way, stood up, turned their back on him, and saluted the flag. And there's a wonderful video of Williams standing stone silent on the stage. And he said never before the entire audience stood up and turned his back on him. And then when retreat was over, they turned and sat down and was on with the show.
I think a quick comment about Robin Williams. He's got a great routine about being the American flag itself. And for those that might be interested, if you go to YouTube and you type in Robin Williams -flag, I think it's a great segment. He talks about how the flag has been abused, what it stands for, and so forth. And it's a great scene. I love the idea of Robin Williams. I mean, of course, he's been cracking people up forever.
He's extraordinarily generous. He's an extremely generous guy. And all of these performers are. Lewis Black was on his first tour last year and volunteered immediately to go back again this holiday season. Kid Rock is very popular with the troops. And, these shows are everything from a Bob Hope type show. We don't really do big shows like that anymore for security and transportation reasons. But they still draw a lot of people, and we can't really advertise them all that much because they draw so many people, and they make a fairly big target. But what we try to do whenever we go is to do large shows and then break the performers down into groups and get them out to forward operating bases with 50 to 100 troops who don't see anybody ever. Toby Keith came back from tour last year, and part of his routine is to take his band with him to do shows at big bases. Then he takes his guitarist into the mountains of Afghanistan and way out in the deserts of Iraq to perform at small bases. And when he got back, he came to us and he said, "If I can do this, you can do this." So in the middle of December, we're going to take delivery on 3 large ruggedized containers. They're actually made in Michigan, and deliver them over there. When they get there, they'll expand into about 250 square feet of an enclosure where people can go in and email home, watch a movie, watch satellite television, and those are going to be going to some remote fire bases in Afghanistan first, and then into Iraq.
I think it's great that this is going to be available to people. I was looking at my list here of people that have been over there, and it's just you've got sports stars, the Anna Korakova, the tennis player. You've got Hollywood Knights, Trace Adkins, Gary Sinise from Forrest Gump with his Lieutenant Dan Band.
Lieutenant Dan Band. Gary is a trooper. He will take his band to Europe and as far as he can, and then he'll go himself to do a handshake tour. He was on a tour with Wayne Newton 5 or 6 years ago, and he ended up playing bass in the Wayne Newton band. He's a very good guy. He gives us a lot of time and does a lot of tours around the U.S. to go to bases, to welcome home ceremonies and those kinds of things.
I just think it's great. If people, again, if they want to donate money to the USO, how do they go about doing that?
www.uso.org. USO.org. Their Donate Now button is in the upper right-hand part of the page. And it's very easy. We make it as painless as possible. And
they can also go there if they wanted to volunteer, true?
Absolutely. We can network them into volunteer opportunities, and they can find out about individual programs. We have a lot of special programs. One, we buy phone cards from AT&T, international phone cards, and every dime we raise for that goes to buy the phone card. We don't take any administrative costs out of that. So you can donate to help us buy phone cards there. A lot of people don't realize how important it is. You get accustomed to talking to people over the internet, but it's really great to hear a voice every now and then.
Oh, I would certainly agree. And we've got about 30 seconds. What else would you like to say to our audience? We'll have you back again, I'm sure.
Well, Dale, I hope so. And we've got Bob and I talked about some other things we can talk about. The USO is this time of year, especially between now and the end of the year. This is a very lonely time for folks overseas. Anybody who served on an unaccompanied tour overseas knows what it's like to be alone and be away from your families at the holidays.
Thank you. We got to go. I'm going to ask you to hold on. You're listening to Veterans Radio. We'll be right back.
The Medal of Honor is the highest award for valor in combat given a member of the Armed Forces of the United States. There have been over 3,400 recipients of the nation's highest award. This is one of them.
Sergeant First Class Nelson Britton killed 20 enemy soldiers and destroyed 4 automatic weapons. Details after this. Britton, a member of Company I, volunteered to lead his squad up a hill with meager cover against murderous fire. He ordered his squad to give him support, and in the face of withering fire and bursting shells, tossed a grenade at the nearest enemy position. On returning to his squad, he was knocked down and wounded by an enemy grenade. Refusing medical attention, he replenished his supply of grenades and returned, hurling grenades into hostile positions and shooting the enemy as they fled. When his weapon jammed, he leaped without hesitation into a foxhole and killed the occupants with his bayonet and the butt of his rifle. He continued to wipe out foxholes and, noting that his squad had been pinned down, rushed to the rear of a machine gun position, threw a grenade into the nest, and ran around to its front where he killed all 3 occupants with his rifle. Less than 100 yards up the hill, his squad again came under vicious fire from another camouflaged, sandbagged machine gun nest well flanked by supporting riflemen. Britton again charged this new position in an aggressive endeavor to silence this remaining obstacle and ran direct into a burst of automatic fire that killed him instantly. The Medal of Honor series is a production of Veterans Radio.
And we're back on Veterans Radio, and we're talking about the USO, and I'm afraid I had to cut off our guest there a little bit at the bottom of the hour because we got to pay our own bills.
I think he's still on.
I know. John, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
All right, John,
yeah.
I'm sorry I cut you off there.
It's okay. I understand. I used to do what you do.
Yeah, well, they get upset when we don't play their ads. Anyway, we're trying to finish up there with what people can do to help you out. And
just visit our website, find a program you want to support at USO.org, and we really appreciate it. We depend on individuals around the country and around the world for their generosity.
Well, John, I want to thank you so very much for being on Veterans Radio, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future, and maybe we can work out something where we can help each other.
Great, Dale. I appreciate that, and I hope you guys have a great holiday.
Thank you very much. Same to you.
Thank you, John.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're talking about the USO here on Veterans Radio today. If you've got a story that you'd like to share with us about the USO or your experiences with some of the acts that you might have seen, you can give us a call at 877-573-7825. Joining me right now on the line here at Veterans Radio is a Noonie Fortin. And Noonie, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thank you, Dale. How are you doing?
We're doing terrific. I need to tell you people a little bit about Noonie, and I don't know what her real name is, because she won't tell me. But Noonie is you're military.
Retired,
Serious.
yes.
You've got a great little story on your own website. That's Noonie Fortin, FORTIN.com, Nooney is Noonie. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. You go there, you can find all about Nooney. How many years were you in the reserves?
22.6.8.
Not that anybody counts, right?
Exactly.
And you ended up as a...
I retired out as a first sergeant.
All right. Okay, Sarge. Well, we'll just change our names around here. The reason that I asked Nooney to be on Veterans Radio today is that she's written a biography of Martha Raye. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the program, I've always been impressed with Martha Raye. I can't remember a time when I didn't think she was the funniest woman in the history of mankind. And my parents thought the same thing. How did you get involved with Martha Raye?
Well, like you, I grew up watching her movies and TV shows and listening to her records. But I went to a veterans meeting in 1987, and a gentleman approached me and asked me if I knew who she was, and I said, yeah. And he says, well, she needs to be honored by our government. And I said, why? He said, if you don't know, you need to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me on a quest from 1987 right up until 1993 to learn everything I could about her and what she did for the veterans and why he felt she needed to be honored. And that all of that research that I did during that time period and all the doors I knocked on across the country and then hitting the brass in D.C., not just the Pentagon, but the White House, eventually my committee was able to get her awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Tell me why.
Her life was full
I was
of nothing but veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that she did for them.
Well, when did she get involved? Did she get involved with the USO starting back during World War II?
She was involved entertaining the troops in 1940, before the USO was formed in February of 41.
Mm-hmm.
She had already been out there doing her thing with the troops who were getting ready to go overseas. And she did everything in her capability to be among them when she wasn't entertaining or doing movies.
Well, let's kind of back up here just a little bit, and can you tell me a little bit about Martha Raye, the entertainer, before being
the entertainer
involved?
Before. She started on stage at the age of 3. Now, that's vaudeville days.
Right.
A little bit before our time.
Yeah, I think so.
Not a whole lot, sometimes I think, but a little bit before our time. And then she went from vaudeville into jazz clubs as a jazz singer, and then into radio programs, and then doing movies. From movies, she went into television.
Well, I think what's interesting is that part of her background was in the movies is that she was in that film where Bob Hope introduced his theme, I guess you could say. Was it the big broadcast of 1938?
Yes, I think it was.
Something like that.
Thanks for the memories.
And yeah, that was the first time that he ever, had that song in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember Martha Raye is unfortunately, I think she should have been a headliner, but she was usually the second character.
Almost always a second character.
Right, with the quote, the beautiful woman being, the heroine of the story, and she was kind of the sidekick.
Right.
But she was always just, I just find her to be a fascinating woman. She always had the kind of that, the big mouth label, unfortunately.
And she used that, her mouth and her comedic ability to really create a character for herself.
Well, she was a very physical comedian also.
Very
physical. Right, which is what I liked about it.
Yes.
Well, let's take her into World War II. Now, she got involved with the USO, and she doesn't necessarily go out with all the big shows. She did a lot of shows on her own.
During World War II, she was out with the smaller groups, and her biggest well-known program was when she went with the Kay Francis, Mitzi Mayfair, and Carol Landis on the Four Jills in a Jeep tour. But she went to places with Dinah Shore. She went to places with occasionally Bob Hope, but not very often. And Jerry Colonna, who was also with Bob Hope.
Right.
And some of the other larger groups, but she preferred being in the smaller groups. She felt she had a little bit more continuity and the ability to be closer to the soldiers than doing a large production.
And, even with the end of World War II, she did not stop entertaining troops.
No. One of the things I found was that she would come back to Hollywood, do a couple movies or whatever, earn herself enough money so she could have the time to go overseas for another jaunt. And following World War II, she did the same thing, went back to Hollywood. Korea happened, she went over there for a few times. Came back home, worked a little bit. Where were we? Vietnam. So was she.
And that's really where she made her reputation, I think, with the troops. Definitely. And if anybody out there can remember or has a story about Martha Raye or the USO when you were in Vietnam, you can give us a call at 877-573-7825. I'm talking with Noonie Fortin, who wrote a book entitled Memories of Maggie. And tell us about Vietnam, because she really got in there early on. I mean, she was there in 60.
She was there before most Americans even knew the American soldiers were over there. She was making return trips in 65.
Yeah, but one of our partners, it was up in Chu Lai, where she seemed to have spent a lot of time up in
she was in the Chu Lai area.
I Corps and 2 Corps up there in the northern part. And she would go out on these little one-woman shows, it sounded like.
Very often she was all by herself. Sometimes she'd have a guitar player or a drummer with her. Quite often she would ask somebody in the group to play for her, somebody in the audience to play for her. Sometimes she'd go with a tape recording, the old tape recording boxes that they used to have to carry around to just provide music. And then she would sing, dance, crack jokes, and really make the troops feel at home. She was the mother, the sister, the aunt, the friend that they could turn to and talk to.
Maybe that's it. I was just thinking about that, because she certainly does remind me of my Aunt Dot, that type of personality, where everybody in the room was welcome, always welcome in the house, and come on down. We're going to take a break here, Noonie, and I want to ask you to hold on. We've got to come up to the quarter of the hour. You're listening to Veterans Radio, and we're talking about USO and especially about Martha Raye. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, give us a call at 877-573-7825. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back on Veterans Radio, and I'm talking with Noonie Fortin, who's the author of the book Memories of Maggie about Martha Raye, and we were talking about some of the experiences that Martha had in Vietnam especially. If you have a question or comment you'd like to make, give us a call at 877-573-7825. Noonie, I read the excerpt of your book on your website, and it was talking about how Martha Raye would go over to Vietnam for months on end.
She sure would. She would go anywhere from a week to 6 months at a time. And most people didn't know when she was there until she showed up. Even the brass never knew when she was going to be there. She'd just land in Tan Son Nhut and hunt around for a ride. And this was at her own expense. Always at her own expense. That I think is what's most amazing, and I think people need to be aware of that. It also in the book, it says that she went along on a couple of USO tours, but only about 9 of those. The rest of the time, she went on her own. She was there on her own the majority of the time, yes. And never, I can't say never with a camera crew, but the camera crews were there during a lot of the USO tours. Or if there was a large show like Bob Hope in town, the camera crews would be there. But if she saw someone from the press coming at her with a camera, she'd say, "Take the soldiers' pictures. Mom and Dad wants to know if their son or daughter's okay." Right, yeah. She didn't think that pictures of her were that important. She did not care to have her name associated in any way, shape, or form, or her photo. She was there for the troops. Well, tell me how she became an honorary colonel. Oh, boy. So many of the men and women thought, going back to World War II, that she was in the military. When the USO people went overseas, they had to have military ID cards, they had to have dog tags, they had to wear the somewhat of a military uniform to kind of blend in and also to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times they were given honorary titles. She started off somewhere, I want to say down in the Bahamas or Bermuda area, as a captain. And then suddenly she was given other honorary titles. By the time Vietnam rolled around, she had developed this rapport of knowing everything there was to know about nursing, even though she was not a trained nurse. She did have some training as like a candy striper.
Mm-hmm.
She did a lot of the work in the hospitals during World War II, helping out, and learned a lot that way. But by Vietnam, the men and women thought she was a real nurse. They thought she was really in the military. They thought she had real rank, because whatever uniform she would have on would always have a rank on it. Eventually, Special Forces gave her an honorary rank of lieutenant colonel.
And her own beret.
And, well, President Johnson gave her a green beret, an honorary green beret, along with a title, Colonel Maggie. She would always tell the soldiers in uniform, when I'm here, you call me Maggie. Martha Raye makes the money that allows me to come here.
Well, that reminds me of a story in your book. These two guys, I can't find it right in front of me, but they had seen her, and then they went to see her in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share that story? I think that's amazing.
And she would call them up to the stage, or point them out in the audience whenever there were soldiers that she had seen overseas.
Well, in this case, these two evening dress and combat boots is what it says.
Mm-hmm.
Private First Class James Cutler was in Fubai in 1965, and he had been chosen to guard Maggie while she was there. And after he came home stateside, he got a chance to see her in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And the place was packed, and he sent a note backstage, knowing that she would never remember who they were.
Right.
And the next thing he knows, he and his buddy have the front seat, right at the stage level. She goes through the whole act, goes backstage, comes out, I guess, for her encore in an evening dress and combat boots.
Yep. And she did that often.
I think that's
she had, for a young woman who never got beyond the 5th grade in school, she couldn't read or write very well. She had to memorize all of her lines, and her different managers and secretaries would help her memorize lines. And she got to the point where she could memorize faces and times and dates. And you could walk up to her at any time later on and say, by the way, I met you on such and such a date, and she would fill in the remaining part.
Well, I think it's amazing. We got about 2 minutes to go. Is there a particular story that you would like to tell about her?
Oh God.
Well, let's tell about her burial then. That's a
Fort
good one.
Bragg, North Carolina. They had to request special permission to bury her there because she wasn't really military. But they did get permission to bury her there, and she had the largest funeral I have ever seen. And she was taken to the ground, carried by members of the Special Forces and Special Forces Association and Special Operations personnel were all there. And every time I go back down to Fort Bragg, I stop by and make sure her headstone is cleared off, and there's always fresh flowers or a fresh arrangement laying there. Somebody goes by there all the time and make sure that her headstone is taken care of.
If I wanted to buy a copy of your book, where would I go to get a copy of that?
You can go to nooneyfortin.com.
Okay.
I have an order page on there, and if people send me in an order, I autograph a book and send it out to them.
I think that's great. You need to have a chance to read this book, and it's not the only one that you've written about Martha Raye, is it?
No, I did a second one that carried over a lot of the stories that I couldn't fit into the first book, and that book is called Potpourri of War. And some of my other books, because I've written 10 in all, they also include her a little bit in each one, because she was so much a part of my life after getting to know her and spending time with her. And thanks to her, we did a A&E biography about her that appeared on television. I just did a featurette portion for the new Four Jills in a Jeep DVD that was just released last month. And it's a way of keeping her memory alive. She was just such a superwoman, and I haven't seen too many of the entertainers do what she did for our troops.
Well,
a lot of them will go over,
right.
But, there's a lot of publicity with them.
No, it sounds as though she was totally, not selfish at all, and she just wanted to do this because she had to.
Exactly.
Noonie, you've also written, and I've got about a minute before I have to get out of here, but I want to have you back on because I know that you've also written a lot of stories about women in the military and their experiences.
Yes.
And so for our listeners, if you want to find out more, we'll have Noonie on in the new year. You can go to NoonieFortin.com, and there's a lot of great information about her on there. And Noonie, I want to thank you so very much for being on Veterans Radio today, and I look forward to talking to you again.
You're quite welcome, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, well, we're coming up to the end of today's program, and I want to remind everybody out there that next week we're going to be doing our program on Christmas presents for military people or for your friends, family, dad, uncles, aunts, whatever it happens to be. So if you've got a product that you would like us to talk about next week, go to our website, click on Contact Us, and we will get you on the air to talk about your product. Last year we had paintings, we had books, we had music, and we're going to do it again this year. So we're hoping that you will tune in next week to find out what presents you can get for that military person in your life. Until then, this is Dale Thornberry from Veterans Radio. You are dismissed.
The opinions or views expressed on this program are not necessarily of Veterans Radio or the station. Veterans Radio is a production of Veterans Radio, LLC.